Well, hello there. This is WeatherBrains episode number 695, the pre-show, the magical time of this program where we do three things: share boring personal stories, sometimes really boring, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say outrageous things.
Never.
Oh, Bill's in one of his upscale motel properties.
We need to guess where I am. America's favorite game show. Guess what kind of hotel Bill is in?
Hampton Inn.
Ooh, that was impressive. How'd you do that?
Well, you've taught us. See, over the years, we picked up all this vast knowledge that's, we can guess somebody's hotel by looking at the curtains behind them. So,
all right. How's my sound, James? Because I'm back on a USB mic.
Sounds clean, man.
Good. Yeah, my video yesterday was terrible because the fan on this new Mac is so loud that it sounded like I was doing it in about a 40-mile-per-hour wind.
See, you guys mock my 7-year-old computer. There is no fan running right now.
I know.
None.
This is a brand new MacBook Pro, and between that and the touch bar, I would throw it in the trash.
Wow. No, my old 7-year-old POC is just quiet as a mouse. No fan running. See, you guys mock me all the time for this.
Who mocked you? Who mocked you? Nobody's ever mocked you.
Somebody, I think it was Kevin.
That's Kevin's job.
Well, it was a browser problem because all of a sudden Safari quit working. So now I've had to use Chrome. So I just use Chrome and all is well. So
there's the mocker himself.
The mocker. So
the what? Huh?
Well, you have a new nickname since you gave up Accelerant.
What did you call me?
My old computer all the time. And so Bill has a brand new computer and the fan is constantly running.
And it just started in your honor.
In my 7-year-old computer, there's no fan noise. It's smooth as silk. There's no problem here. So there.
What is my nickname now?
The mocker.
You mock me over this old computer I have here.
I have to say the color palette on my set here tonight is extremely pleasing. It's all nice muted tans and taupes and browns and grays. It's just
so where are you?
Tampa.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you great.
Oh, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Thank
good
you.
To have you
Jennifer almost sounded sincere when she said that.
I'm very sincere.
Almost a little
so
bit.
Close.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So, Bill, you're in Tampa, Florida, huh?
Tampa, Florida for 3 days. I'm going to get to ride the Amtrak on Wednesday night to Orlando because I've never ridden that route and visit a hotel there. And I did about as good a forecast for that hotel budget-wise as I do on my weather forecast because, the owner was kidding me because when I met him the first time, I said, it'll do 72% at $117. And I thought, that's a really strong set of numbers, blah, blah, blah. It's running like 88% at $180. Wow. And so he was like, Bill, that's that forecast, I'm glad you missed it. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's still not a good forecast either way you look at it.
Wow.
So, but anyway, Orlando's just on fire.
Well, good for them.
Look at the clear slot in the middle of this board in West Texas on the visible. It's just really unique looking.
All right, so now we're all racing to a browser to pull up the
bring down the internet
satellite view for West Texas.
It's just kind of unique looking, real hard edge to it. And
is it a dry line or something, or what you got going on?
No, it's spinning around this vort over here. Let me see if I can.
Do I look like I'm in an interrogation room? I feel like I don't have enough light, and there's just like I'm being interrogated here.
Get you a bare bulb and.
Are you at Guantanamo or something there?
No, I'm not, I promise. But I don't have a lot of light in this room.
I'm going to go try to find our guest weather brain here, so y'all bear with me.
So let's see if I can do a screen share. Application window. Share.
That's what I'm trying to do too. But
So let's
yeah, there it
let's
is.
see if we can. Let's see if we can.
Isn't
Oh
that
yeah,
cool?
that's
Isn't that
cool.
cool looking?
That's really cool. Wow. So I would imagine there's some
wow.
thunder involved in that on the east side.
Have we done a chipmunk test with John? John's here.
Oh, sorry, I'm staring at this satellite picture. John, say something.
Helium test.
Yep. It's ebony. Wow.
Here he goes. He comes back. We
Sounds
got
like
or next week. We got to get him to say fender bender.
Alvin.
I'll know that commercial. I love that commercial.
So you guys are in a what day 5 or 6 risk out there? Which was it? Saturday? You have the big risk?
Me, yeah, Saturday, yeah.
Saturday, great.
It's bad timing. It's Matthew's high school graduation ceremony.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
how do you handle that? Tornado warning, and your son is graduating from high school. That's a crime.
yeah, I'm
Wow.
hoping that it won't time out like the current model suggests.
So how does it sound now, guys?
Yeah, give it a minute. It'll stabilize, maybe.
Yeah, the helium sound is gone. Your pitch is normal, a little
Say
distorted.
fender bender. Do you know
I
that
need a new
spot?
I
know that
just need a
commercial?
new computer.
The State Farm commercial? It's so funny.
Oh yeah, those are good.
No, you're good, John. Forget the new computer, man. Let's keep these things forever. See, Bill's got some, $5,000 brand new computer, and his fan is buzzing all the time. And I got this old 7-year-old clunker, and it's quiet as a mouse. I refuse, and I've got all the ports I would ever need on both sides: SD card reader,
Yeah.
HDMI,
That's
USB,
true.
Thunderbolt. I've got all these ports. I don't need any dongles or dingles or any of that.
I got
stuff.
this travel hub right here that I take with me when I go. I got all the ports I need.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I've got I got a similar. I do have a USB expansion port here in the office, and I carry it in my bag for traveling because you plug in the camera and the audio interface, and before you know it, you got to have some more. But no, I'm happy. I refuse to spend another dime.
Well, if you guys are finished comparing the size of your ports, maybe we should go on.
Oh,
And that's a show
there's the
title.
title.
Absolutely.
No, pre-show doesn't count.
Yeah, we can't use anything in the pre-show because the audio list for those that are watching, the produced audio version that most people listen to does not include this, which maybe it should.
Thankfully.
We ought to just record these 15 minutes and releases it as a separate show.
Under a different title.
Yeah, whether
We gotta come
whether Stooges or something.
WeatherBrains Unplugged.
Exactly. So Kim is out. She is in the test bed dealing with things. And Nate, I think, is traveling. I think he's on an airplane tonight. And I think everybody else is here.
What about Troy? Have you heard from him?
He typically shows up at 8:28, which means he has 2 minutes left.
Where's Aubrey? She said she was going to send me a note about some top secret project last week. Remember that? I never heard from her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe she decided you don't have the proper clearance.
That's a good looking tie there, James. That's you going to wear that on TV?
No, I'm going to change before I go on the air tonight.
I like that one.
That's some new shoes here.
Wow.
This is embarrassing. So there's a local sporting goods company headquartered here, and they noticed on some of the video from the schools, the pictures, these school visits, that my old shoes were embarrassingly bad, and they sent me new shoes and cookies today.
Look at that.
So,
wow.
Very nice.
Payola.
Payola, baby. In fact, the old ones are in the trash over here now, so they're done. So new kicks. And the cake I got today has to be, I've been doing this 41 years. I've not had a cake this good. It was unbelievable.
Really?
In fact, let me see if I can. You ever heard the book Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
Sure.
Of course.
Mhm.
Of course.
Let me pull up this cake so you guys can see it.
You mean it was good decoration or good taste?
Both. This is the cake, and that is a cake.
Oh, yeah. That's from the
Oh,
movie.
wow.
The whole thing is a cake.
Oh, my
you got the
goodness.
That's awesome.
Okay. I
the
see.
stacked
Holy
pancakes, the
mackerel.
hamburger, the meatball, the
Yeah.
spaghetti. You got bacon and eggs
Oh,
down
yeah.
there.
You got it.
They got you?
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
Wow.
That is awesome.
Is that a home baker or a shop did that?
she is her name is Hope Crocker, and she started she self-taught herself how to do this. And, now she makes cakes for weddings and school events like this.
Remarkable.
Wow.
Okay. Okay.
It was pretty crazy stuff.
That's
So-
wonderful. What's
And
the
it's
what's the smaller
Fear-
thing on the other side of you? On the opposite side of the picture, that with the white streaks on it. I don't want to know the other side.
Oh, that's a meatball with spaghetti.
Oh, okay, got it.
You can
You
turn my
got
other
cheese
computer
down
on.
there. Look at the pretzel. I mean, the pretzel and the cheese. That's all
awesome.
cake.
I think I could do the pretzel.
And the lettering, what does the lettering say? Wow, look at that. It's really done well.
That's impressive.
Now, this just
We need
how
to
do you
get her on
become
a
Look, if y'all want to see the show.
we need to get her on a Food Network show.
Wow.
no
Absolutely.
kidding.
Wonder if she can make a
Follow-
cheese head.
Yeah.
All right.
Aubrey, breaking news. I'm out.
Oh, Lord.
Right.
She's our weather history person. She needs to be here.
My ND has me on a project and I'm a week behind.
These NDs, they need to go away.
Big baby.
ND.
You think there's anybody watching the show that doesn't know what an ND is, James Spann?
Non-disclosure.
North Dakota.
North Dakota.
That's what I think when I see ND.
That's the show title.
Let's say hello to Steve. Steve, can you hear us okay?
Hey, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Oh, good. We hear you loud and clear, too.
Hi,
Got you.
Steve.
Hey,
Loud
how
and
y'all
clear.
doing? All
Doing
right.
great.
Well, look at-
Got that camera tilted up beautifully. We thought we were just going to talk to your hat there for a while.
Oh, we
He's
got it
got
all
good
straight now.
pipes. Steve, do you do like a show on WBGO, the jazz station in New York or something? You sound like that. You got that kind of a DJ vibe. Oh, we lost him.
Did we lose Steve?
Hello.
Did he freeze?
Hello.
No, there
Oh,
we go.
It locked up. Are you a DJ too?
No, in my life. My life.
There you
All right,
go.
so we'll have a hit the post contest with Span here in a few minutes.
We never did that, did we?
We'll get kicked off, I played,
Oh, that's
We
right.
can't anymore.
I
Yeah.
played the Dr. John song, Right Place, Wrong Time. In fact, this one.
My theme song.
There goes this show.
That's one of my favorite songs by Dr.
Got a
John.
nasty
Right place, wrong
email
time.
from YouTube. You're in violation of copyright. Blah, 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 blah. This is one strike, 3 strikes, and you're out. So,
So if I played it a couple of times, could we stop doing this show?
yeah, let's just play the whole thing and we're done. It'll be 2 strikes, 1 more, and we're out of here.
Yeah, there's strike two.
Not the only thing I can play is this.
Yeah, that one belongs to us. For better or worse, it belongs to us.
You know, that's become a thing here at this station, James. So much so last week they had a company-wide social media webinar for Nexstar. And one of the producers here, there was a hashtag and people were, but she tweeted that out and it got retweeted a bunch of times, I think. And they all loved it.
Wow. All right. We're going to make these people famous. All right. Well, welcome to our television viewers. We're going to start this show. We apologize for the pre-show foolishness. Actually, we don't. That's what we do here. So turn on recorder number 1, recorder number 2, and here we go. In
Hey,
5,
oh,
4,
I
what?
can't stay
What?
here, can I?
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
False start.
What are you doing over here?
I have to move. I forgot. I'm not doing the Fox, but I'll move to the lobby here after we get going.
We get to see the paneling.
No, it's gone.
Oh, that's right. You took out the paneling. Man, that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
There we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains episode number 695 for May 13th, 2019. It's the weekly show that's all about weather. Look who's in the house, Dr. John. In the right place at the wrong time.
Well, we're desperately seeking the sun up here. It's unbelievable how much rain we've received. The atmosphere thinks we've gone back to late winter. We've got an upper low that's just meandering over us. I'm looking at my thermometer. It's 47.7 degrees. I was forced to turn the heat on today. I cannot believe it.
We don't even want to hear from Troy.
Watching
come
the
on.
baseball game up at Fenway in Boston, John, and this was Sunday, yesterday. It was, middle of the afternoon. It was like 45 degrees and raining, just miserable, miserable.
We're about 49 and just a torrential rain during the afternoon.
Wow, unbelievable. All right, Troy, so make us feel better. How warm is it in Austin, Tejas?
It is 72.3 right here, James.
You're making me sick.
I mean, too.
And is anything new with that, John? That goes with every week.
That's right.
72.3, a beautiful day. We were 84 out at Camp Mabry and 85 out at Bergstrom today.
Wow.
Beautiful weather. Starting to dry out a little bit, maybe a little rain later in the week, but I have a feeling, Dr. John, those warmer temperatures will be scooting up your way before too much longer.
Oh, they will, Troy. We'll be in the 70s by the end of the week, but right now it's awfully grim.
Yep.
I'm looking at these CPC maps. The 6 to 10 day in the whole eastern part of the country is red, so warmer weather is coming.
Yep.
So Kevin Selly is in the northern part of Texas, Wichita Falls. And how's your weather, Kev?
We did 81 today, and we're just waiting on the big apocalypse that's coming this weekend, if you believe social media. And so we're gnashing teeth and biting our fingernails and waiting for it to happen.
And shouldn't we always believe the social media there, Kevin? I mean,
I do. That's how I do. I don't look at any models anymore. I just go to social media and I plug that into my weather graphics system and I go with it. It's just a lot less friction. There's your show title.
Which part? The a lot less friction?
Yes.
Yeah, Kev goes to Uncle Joe's Tot Locker and Facebook weather page to get all of his information.
y'all realize that Steve is going to leave us tonight. And he is going to up and cut and run, and I don't know that I would blame him tonight.
No.
I know he had such a nice experience with Scott Martin, and then he met the real people.
Run, Steve,
He's
run.
out.
man.
So Aubrey is out. Nate is out. And
He's on a plane.
Kim is out tonight. So, Bill, welcome back. You've been gone for a while. You're
I know. This traveling's terrible, but I had to be here for this show tonight. I've been looking forward to it for too long.
So you're down in Tampa, Florida. So
Yeah, I won't tell you what.
Yes.
Unfortunately, my watch doesn't go out to a decimal point, but it's 75 degrees in Tampa, according to my Apple Watch face. So just take a bite out of that, Dr. John.
Well, what hotel is this now, Bill?
That's right. We haven't played America's favorite game show, which is guess which type of hotel Bill is in. So
Hampton Inn. I got this.
Doggone it, James, you look me up on the internet or something. What are you doing?
By the way, one note here. I think about our friend JB Elliott when I see what's on my monitor here. Right? Just a second ago, they were just grubbing, man. They were grinding and grubbing on this thing. I mean, I miss JB.
Grinding and grubbing. What does that mean?
Oh man!
every Monday
next
night
show.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next.
That's a University of Alabama girl. Now you be nice, James. Yeah, James. Tonight's guest weather panelist is was a weather brain back in November. But even if you didn't catch that show, you'll probably recognize her voice. She was the longtime radio voice of the Weather Channel. She does dozens of radio stations across the country.
Yep.
She's an accomplished weather historian and runs the amazing Tornado Talk website. Jennifer Nairmore, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
We're probably keeping you from your work tonight.
No, I did it already.
She's
I
like
worked-
you, Span. She did her work at like 3 o'clock this
No,
afternoon.
Yeah, I've been ready
Yes.
to talk to you guys. And by the way, it is 48 in Marysville, Ohio, which is where I'm at right now. So it is pretty chilly. I got my heat on as well. Hate it. Oh, I'm over it.
Yeah, I had all the windows open today, every door in the house open. It was just perfect before I left for Tampa. And,
I miss it. I'm ready for it again.
So it was really awesome. But tonight's guest weather brain is a filmmaker and documentarian. Steve Collins is working on a new project that caught Steve Holmes his eye. Steve is, of course, one of our our super guest stringers. They find all the great guests, and Steve Holmes told us about Steve, and so we had to have him on because he has a new documentary coming up about a famous event that happened in 1969. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Wow.
Well, we are excited. I have a special place in my heart for documentarians because that's my favorite film genre.
Great.
And when you throw in a little weather, it's really amazing. So you grew up in the town of Hazelhurst, Mississippi, right, Steve?
Correct. I did.
So talk about that life in the 60s in deep South Mississippi and Hazelhurst and what was going on in that era and that time.
Well, like other southern towns in Mississippi during the 60s, it was all about civil rights, voters registration, boycotting, and stuff like that. And that was the time, that I grew up in, that I remember so vividly, the boycotting of the town, Hazelhurst. It was just unbelievable,
Well, 1969 was a really watershed year in American history, coming off of a terrible year of 1968. Of course, the assassination of Dr. King, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy,
right?
And things were really a powder keg across most of this country at that time. You can't imagine how many things happened in 1969, though. You mentioned civil rights. Vietnam was, of course, a hot topic.
Right.
Of course, Nixon was inaugurated in January that year. I just watched a great independent film, on the PBS program, Independent Lens, Steve. I bet you caught it too, about the historically black colleges and those protests and the protests that boiled over at Southern University in Baton Rouge. And it really taught me a lot, even though I was 7 or 8 years old then. There's a lot to learn and a lot to digest during that time. And so I'm sure that was spilling over into your life there.
Along with a lot of other things.
And so there's this morning in January 1969 when you wake up to all kind of hell breaking loose.
Yes, January 23rd.
So talk about that morning for us.
Wow. January 23rd, 1969, approximately, 6:30 in the morning. We were getting ready to go to school, like the other kids in the neighborhood and around town. And all of a sudden, we heard this noise. Sounded like a freight train. Several freight trains, as a matter of fact. And my sister started laughing uncontrollably.
That's an unusual reaction, Steve.
Yes, because we had never heard that kind of sound before. Of course, yes, we had heard the freight train, but not like this particular morning. And she just started laughing and laughing and laughing. And I was saying, shut up. And she just wouldn't.
Did you know what it was, Steve?
We did not know. And all of a sudden, the wind started blowing really, really hard. So we dove up under the bed. And it just seemed like the wind, how somebody would take you by the nose and just lead you? Well, that's the way it seemed like it had our house. It's like it just had it and just wouldn't let it go. But afterward, everything just calmed down peacefully, as if nothing had never happened. And so we go to the front door, and wow, what do we see? Nothing but destruction. As far as you can see, nothing but destruction. Not a house left where we stayed. Of course, there was a few houses above us, but going back on up the hill from where we were, it was like a matchbox, stems, limbs, just everywhere.
So your house was just outside the main destruction path,
right? It just barely missed our house, even though not it twisted our house off the block, off the foundation, but it didn't tear our house up. Of course, it messed the front porch up. That's when I mentioned, like when somebody held you by the nose, that's what it felt like, because it felt like it had that front porch and no other part of the house, and it just had it, and just wouldn't let it go.
Jen, talk about the tornado meteorologically for a moment, because you just wrote a great story about it on your website not too long ago.
Yeah, it was the first tornado of January of 1969. It was the first tornado of the year. A couple other things with it. There were 3 tornadoes that day, and this obviously was the strongest that went through. It was later rated F4. Interesting about this particular event, I was reading Thomas Grzoulis's book about nature's ultimate windstorm, and he talks about this particular event actually led to the development of the Fujita-Pearson scale. And it all had to deal with Alan Pearson, who was the director of the NSSFC at that time. And there was the tornado that occurred on the 23rd. And then 5 days later, there was a water spout that had gone through just the swamplands of parts of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the Weather Bureau had been documenting tornadoes since 1950, but there was no rating system. So they were all pretty much considered equal, even though we knew they weren't because of their strength. And just based on how they described the tornadoes is how we knew one was stronger than the other. And so he had written down this tornado 5 days later. And then a colleague, this is from Grzoulis's book, had jokingly said to Pearson something like, "Well, Al, you got 1 out of 2, 50% isn't bad," suggesting that the minor water spout was in any way comparable to that monster that went through Hazelhurst, and 32 people had died. And so that really led Pearson to go, you know what, we need some way of designating which tornadoes were stronger than the other ones. And looking back meteorologically that day, through the first 2-3 weeks of this year, it was extremely cold. There were no storms that were really brewing across the country. And then all that kind of got scoured out. And there were actually a couple of squall lines that had developed. And it was just, very interesting to see this massive tornado developing so early in the morning. But the atmosphere had recovered very quickly. This is actually the deadliest tornado on record for January since records began in 1950. There were 32 people that had died, and at least 241 were injured in this event. So it was just very interesting, and just the fact that this triggered, wanting to create the scale to, go. You've got this massive tornado in Hazelhurst. How do you go back and look at that damage and decide what it was rated versus the water spout 5 days later? So very interesting event, and just a lot of interesting stories within that was documented by the storm data narrative by the Weather Bureau at the time about the different things that had happened there. And it was just, and the track, guys, I mean, it was officially 117.8 miles. That's what the Storm Prediction Center has. There are some discrepancies. Storm data has 120 miles. Grzoulis lists 105, but regardless, I mean, it was a long track. And from the WeatherWise article that Bill sent me earlier today, that Pearson had written about these tornadoes from 1969, it was on the ground for 3 hours. So most indications here that there was probably not a lot of lifting. So it wasn't really a skipping path. Probably a lot of it was on the ground.
And pretty amazing to have a tornado of that intensity, not totally out of the question that you could, but to have it that early in the morning. Because Steve, you said it happened first thing in the morning, right? What time
Right.
did it hit Hazelhurst?
I think it was about maybe 6:15 or 6:30, something like that.
So I assume you
Yeah.
had no warning,
No
Steve,
warning.
that it was coming.
No
Was there
warning
even
at
a way to
all.
get warnings back then?
We didn't have warnings back then, but we do have warnings now. Definitely.
So Troy, I know you wanted to jump in there and
Yeah,
talk to Steve for a minute.
I've got to talk to Steve, Troy Kimmel down in Austin, Texas.
All right, Troy.
And I want to, when we got the show notes tonight, you were born on January 17th, 1957.
Correct.
I was born on August the 2nd, 1957, same year. So fine number of years, Steve. But at that time, in 1969, in January 23rd of that, I was living up in Alcorn County, Mississippi, up on the Tennessee border, up around in Corinth, Mississippi.
Right.
And Stephen, as a sixth grader that year, I've always known about Hazelhurst, but I didn't know, I knew about the tornado, but I didn't know exactly why. I just remembered it and seeing it on the news as a sixth grader in school there across the state, up in the north part of the state. So I wasn't down south. And when I was reading all this, it just really brought back a lot of that because I just remembered that Hazelhurst storm. And I know for a fact that in Corinth, Mississippi back then, Steve, that I was in the sixth grade when this happened. It was the summer thereafter that we desegregated the schools up in North Mississippi in Corinth. And I remember that. And it was a couple of years later, Steve, that in Alcorn County up in Corinth, we had, I think it was an F4 tornado on April 19th, 1970. So it would have been almost about a year or so after the Hazelhurst tornado. But I just, a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate you coming on tonight because this one has really always been in the back of my memory, sort of as a kid growing up, not knowing that much about it, but it sounds really interesting. And I appreciate you documenting all this because for me, this has been great. Since I saw the show notes this weekend, I've been excited about this, about the chance to get to meet you and to hear more about this storm that's just sort of tacked in my mind. So thanks for being here tonight with us.
Okay. Thank you.
So Steve, the tornado is a terrible memory by itself.
Yeah.
Of course, a huge tragedy, but there's an interesting story going into it. And it's, it's the point of your documentary, right?
Yes, it is.
Tell us about the boy.
Okay. First of all, yes, we did have a warning.
That's right. It just didn't come from the U.S. Weather Bureau.
We did have a warning, but we did not heed the warning. Let's go back. A boy, 12 years old, from parts unknown. Nobody knew where he came from. Didn't know his name. Didn't know anything about him. He just showed up, just like a stray dog. He just showed up. But the interesting thing about this boy is that he had a pop bottle on his head. And it would not fall off. He could run. He could turn flips. And that bottle would not fall off. It would not fall off. People tried to knock it off, and they just couldn't do it. The other interesting things about this boy is that he could foresight things that happened in your life or would happen in your life. He could tell you when was your birthday. He could even tell you when you was going to die. He told quite a few people that was throwing rocks at him. And he told them, because what you're doing, you're not going to live long. And sure enough, one guy was in a serious car accident a year later. He told one guy that he was going to die at an early age, and he did.
Oh, wow. So when did this fella show up?
I have documented him as early as 1966, coming to Hazelhurst. But he was in other places before then. The first time he came to Hazelhurst was in 1966. And believe it or not, they locked him up in 1966. He came in 67. They locked him up in 67. 68. Locked him up. But each time he came, it was the same message. Something bad is going to happen in this town.
Wow. Was he specific at all in his prediction of what it might be about or where it might come from?
He did say that something was going to come out of the sky. He did say that something was going to come out of the sky and tear this place up.
Oh.
Steve, did after January 23rd, 1969, Steve, is there any record that anyone saw him in Hazelhurst again?
He was seen only one time afterwards.
Okay.
And after that, he was seen no more.
Is there any evidence that it was religious based?
I'm going to have to say, yes, it was, based on what I found out about him.
Tell us more about that. Flesh that out.
Well, first of all, a lot of people do believe that he was sent by God. A lot of people believe that he was an angel. Some believe that he was a prophet. You know, to me, from what I found out, he was just a person that was chosen by God to do God's work. So you can label him as a prophet.
So what flesh it out a little more. What is your evidence of that? And I had to change location, so I came back in. He came several years in a row on the same day, or what was the history?
Well, no, he when he came, he stuck around for several weeks at a time.
I see.
Yeah, he did. He stuck around several weeks at a time, and he lived with different people. A lot of people would take him in. You know, they would feed him, and basically that was it. But now, a lot of times he did not stay with people. I found out that he stayed in the woods some nights, you know.
And any evidence of where he was the other 40, 45 weeks of the year?
No evidence. But again, I found out that Hazelhurst was not the only place that he visited.
Okay.
I have documented him from Faraday, Louisiana, all the way across Mississippi, Highway 84 down to Highway 49, back to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and from Covington, Louisiana, back all the way up to Memphis, Tennessee. So he covered a lot of ground.
Is there evidence that he was giving those type of messages to other communities as well?
Yes, he was. In fact, I believe, I don't have a whole lot of evidence because my thing was to find out things about Hazelhurst, but I found out that, and I do believe that he actually predicted Hurricane Camille to hit the Mississippi
my
Gulf
goodness,
Coast.
that was going to be my question.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
And not only that, a tornado that hit Jackson, Mississippi, Candlestick Park, specifically in I believe it was May 3rd of 1966. I may have that date wrong. Yeah, Candlestick Park.
yeah, I mean that's one of the famous tornadoes in Mississippi history.
Yes.
And then you had the big Delta outbreak in 1971. It was a terrible Sunday.
Yes.
So,
Steve, do you have any recollections of the guy? Did you ever get a chance to meet him? Do you remember anything yourself?
Wow. You know, I never got a chance to meet him. Never. I came close to seeing him, but I never got the chance to see him. And I think that's a good thing because I have been fascinated about his story ever since. And I guess that's why I'm so interested, so dedicated to doing this documentary about him.
What is the city of from, I guess, 2019, Steve, the year that we're in now? What does the community of Hazelhurst think about the boy with the soda
with the pop
bottle on his head? I mean, what is it, the gut feel from the people that live there now?
The people that live here now. Let's talk about the new generation first.
Okay.
Because they only heard the story from their parents or grandparents. And to them, it's a myth. Along with other people, it's a myth. But if you ask the older people, my age, they would tell you the story. And they remember the story vividly about this boy. So if you came to Hazelhurst and you said, especially in a black neighborhood, if you came to a black neighborhood and you mentioned the boy with the pop ball on your head, you're going to get a conversation. Oh yeah,
Wow.
you're gonna get a yes, indeed.
So, Steve, you interviewed hundreds of eyewitnesses or dozens of eyewitnesses after the tornado, and I imagine those are some amazing stories. So,
Yes.
what
Oh,
are
yeah.
some of the more poignant or striking stories that you remember from your investigation?
Pretty much every story. Pretty much every story. There are some stories that I refuse to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the amazing story, and I've asked everybody that I've interviewed this question: the first time that you saw the boy. And in fact, let me play you a clip. I have a clip of that of a particular lady in the middle of town seeing the boy for the very first time. Can we play that clip?
Yeah, can you do it? You know how to do it?
I think so. Let's try it. Here we go.
This is called the dramatic pause.
We may not
Plain,
be.
it's not coming down the line
Yeah,
because it's not on his mic.
I think we're not getting it, Steve.
You're not getting it?
No,
No.
unfortunately.
Oh wow. Okay.
Probably because you're going through your earbuds. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think I forgot to click on the three dots up here. So, okay,
For the screen sharing.
okay. Now what is it?
You got your technical supporters back there?
Yeah.
Your 12-year-old?
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Most
You
people
got
did
it.
I'm that way.
That's right.
Okay.
I could play the song.
Hope you tried turning it off and on again, off and on again, off and on again.
That doesn't get us a strike, does it, James?
I hope
Got to get it, yeah.
So while you're fixing us up, Steve, you said there are stories you can't share. Is that from people after the tornado, the victims of the tornado?
Okay. I don't see it. Wow.
That's
So,
all right. Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
okay. How do we share the screen?
There's a little
Green arrow.
there's a little green screen in the
arrow.
top left corner with an arrow coming out of it called screen share. And you can click that. Did you and Scott do that together?
Okay. I think we did. It's the top left, you say?
Yes, sir. In this window right here.
Okay. Now, the three dots. Click on the three dots.
I think it should be up from there, probably.
Yeah.
The green.
It's up above it toward the top, second from the top.
Okay. Oh, the arrows. Green screen. Oh, yeah.
Green,
Green share. Okay. I got it. Okay. Now, what do I do after that? Do I hit?
Click it and then tell it which screen to show. It'll open up a window and ask you which application you want to show.
Okay. Okay, let me take this out so I can.
So when he said that, though, James, it
Yeah,
reminded me of some of the stories you told. Now he's screen sharing.
Okay, now I'm minimize.
Screen sharing me.
Okay, let's try it now. Here we go.
Get two of me.
That's a lot of Bill Murray
Yeah,
right now.
one's enough.
Too many.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, there we go.
And unfortunately, there's no audio. Screen sharing is video only.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you're
No.
kidding me.
No audio?
No audio.
Oh,
Good
wow.
Screen
video. but
share,
no-
it's only video.
Thanks for bursting our bubble there, James.
Yeah, James.
I didn't mean to pop a bubble here, but
Okay, you got audio now?
it's way off in the background.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Wow. Okay, so we're gonna have to skip the audio, the video. Okay.
Yeah, you'll just have to tell us about it.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
so unscreen share.
Okay.
get you back. But when he said that, James, it reminded me of what you talk about being in the hospital in Jasper in 1974, on April 3rd, 1974. They're just stories you can't even share.
Yeah, there's just some things you don't need to talk about.
Yep.
And that's, it maybe at some point down the line, but again, for me, no, I have nothing to say. It's like Forrest Gump. I just got nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Wow.
talking, Steve, about those stories you can't share after an event like that.
Right.
They're just too terrible to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so you spent some time in the hospital there in Hazelhurst, didn't you, after the tornado? Or you talked to some people that were there after?
No, I did not, because I did not get injured or anything, but I know quite a few people that was injured, and I also know of people that got killed. As a matter of fact, a couple of guys from right up the street from where I stay, was injured.
Now, I find that WeatherWise article really interesting, Jen, because it's penned, of course, by Alan Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
And, at first I didn't believe him that the first tornado of the year didn't happen until January 23rd. But I've tried every way I can today to prove him wrong. And,
Yeah, we put on our sleuth hats here, and no, it looks like it was, based on the pattern. It was pretty cold, and then he kind of talks about two squall lines intersecting in southwestern Mississippi, and the tornado was actually on the ground for 40 miles before it hit Hazelhurst. So it was already booking it for a while, and then it hit Hazelhurst and did most of its significant damage at that point, and then it continued to travel beyond that point. Causing significant damage through Simpson County, through Rankin County, eventually lifting in Smith County. And Hazelhurst, according to the summaries, 11 died in Hazelhurst, and then 140 were injured in the town.
And Steve Pearson says that the tornado had colors of orange and red and yellow, which is really unusual for us in the Southeast. It must have been backlit by the rising sun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recollection of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, one lady described it as a dragon tail, just woof, woof, nothing but red fire coming from its tail.
Wow.
One guy said that the whole sky turned red.
Mm-hmm. But no photographs exist of it, right?
No photograph that I know of.
And I read a story that said that there were 18 people that were blown into a pond at some point along the path of the tornado, and then it had to be drained to recover.
Yes, the Gilmore family. As a matter of fact, that was my Uncle Dan Gilmore and Lily Gilmore, my Aunt Lily Gilmore. They had, let me see, I think about 21 children. 21. I think at the time, 15 of them was in the house. And the tornado lifted the house up off its foundation into the air and brought it back down to the ground. And there was a pond between the house and the sawmill. And the house slid down into the pond.
Wow.
Yes. With all the kids in the house.
And,
along with other people were blown in the pond as well.
And Jen, I thought it was really interesting that Alan Pearson in his article wrote that there was a house that was saved because it had its windows open. And I thought that was an amazing line.
Yeah, I did too.
From 1970.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because I still believed, that's what the World Book article said about tornado safety. You open all the windows, blah, blah, blah. But that was still 50 years ago, a common thought that the windows open might save a house. That's really unusual.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Who would have thought, Jen, and all of you, that tornadoes, if they wanted the damn window open, they'd opened it. You don't want to be there when it does go. Always what I tell people is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Bill, let me jump in here. You remember more recently the 1991 Andover, Kansas tornado. That was the one that was filmed by that crew where several people took shelter under an overpass.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And they survived. And what comes down the road 8 years later is May 3rd, 99. And those people and more took shelter under an overpass. And They didn't survive.
No.
No, a very fateful video. Unfortunately, it caused
You're right.
a lot of problems down the road. I had a question for you, Dr. John. Pearson mentions in there that an unusual diffluence pattern was set up that morning by a split jet stream. The northern branch of the jet stream peeled off to the north,
Right.
while the southern branch continued going to the southeast. And this area of Mississippi was right square in the middle of that diffluence. Talk about why that's just steroids for a thunderstorm.
That's so true. So it's the highly amplified northern stream that comes into contact with the subtropical jet. So the subtropical jet's moving across the Gulf Coast, and then you get this highly amplified flow coming in from the north. And by that diffluence in the mid levels, it's like opening your flue, and you've got this roaring fire in your fireplace, but it's not going anywhere because the flue is closed. You open the flue, and all of a sudden you have this evacuation of mass up through your chimney. And you're right, it's like putting your fire on steroids. But in the atmosphere, it's just this rapid upward motion of the atmosphere. And we know that that leads to stretching and generation of relative helicity. So you don't want to be in that area for sure.
Well, that just, I mean, Dr. John, that just results in that air being sucked off the surface and
Absolutely.
carried along. Yeah.
So you generate, a meso low really fast.
Yeah.
And the parent thunderstorm that produced this tornado came right across Natchez, which was, of course, famous for an extremely deadly tornado
Historic,
that hit there also. So, Steve, you mentioned the Candlestick Park tornado, which made it into the major motion picture in 2011. The Help, it was a huge part of that story in that movie. So Mississippi's no stranger to tornadoes, that's for sure.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So where are you going to go with this as a filmmaker, Steve? How's it gonna look? When's it gonna be ready? When are we going to get to debut it at the National Weather Association meeting in Huntsville?
There you go.
Actually, I am through with the documentary.
Oh wow!
Yes, I just finished up the movie trailer for it.
And are you calling it the boy with the pop bottle in his head, or I like the pop bottle prophet? I saw that somewhere. That was
I saw that. I really like that, the pop bottle prophet. I thought that was very cute. Yes, but I want to kind of shop it around the movie trailer, and let's just see what happens from there.
So do you go after markets like film festivals? Are they really important to you in promoting a film like that, or? What's your ultimate goal with it?
My ultimate goal is to hopefully that someone will pick it up and turn it into a biopic.
Yeah, maybe Netflix will grab it and
hope so.
Pay you several $100,000 or something. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
It really would. It really would. Yeah.
Hey, Steve, Troy again. You and I, we're the same age.
Okay.
So we need to talk, if you will, Steve, about what millennials don't know about those days, because in those days we talked about the science maybe not being where it needed to be to get the warnings. But you and I both know that maybe you had 3 channels on TV out of Jackson, maybe. Okay. And that was it. I mean, there was no cable, and that was if most households had a TV. But from what I understand, even on the Jackson TV the night before at 10 o'clock, people told you they called for thunderstorms, but that was about it, right?
They did. And that is true. They did say thunderstorms. Nobody mentioned tornado. There was never mention of a tornado. And lo and behold.
Well, I guess really to let people understand, and Jen, I mean, you're on radio all over the place, and you're famous for that. And we have radio, we have all this stuff nowadays. I think people that are watching us tonight have to realize you did not have that much access to weather information at this point. And usually it was at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. That was it during the day on one of the 3 TV stations. If you were lucky enough to have an outdoor antenna that you could pick up the stations from up the road, Steve, and things like that. And I think that is real important for those younger folks that are watching us tonight. It was a completely different world.
And you just hope for a radio station that had a NOAA weather wire, I guess back then, an ESSA weather wire.
Yeah. But I can tell you that probably, I mean, Bill, come on. And James, it probably was in Jackson. I don't know. I know there probably was a radio station in Hazelhurst.
Yes, it was. I believe it was WMDC at the time.
Okay.
But there was nobody there at that time in the morning because everything pretty much shut down around about 10 o'clock. Even the TV station, they shut down around about 12 at night.
You're right.
So that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Wow.
I think, you think about these tornadoes, and there are probably others, but the Candlestick Park stands out. This tornado stands out, and the Delta outbreak in 1971. And of course, there was a great Natural Disaster Survey report that came out after that tornado that, talked about the warning processes that were in place, especially on a Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. A lot of radio stations, were not programmed to do the weather coverage that needed to happen. James, you probably remember, did you have a weather wire at your station in Tuscaloosa when you were just starting out?
No. And what the way it worked, and again, this was back in the 1970s, and we had an Associated Press teletype machine, and that was it. We didn't have a weather wire, and the delay between the time a warning was issued and the time we received it, we would often get it on that AP machine after the expiration time. So it was basically worthless. So what saved us? We had a little radio, a radio receiver that had a tone alert, and those people at the local civil defense office could trigger that radio, and they had a weather wire. In the civil defense office in the city hall in Tuscaloosa. So when they got the warning, they would trigger that radio, and it would go off with the audible alert and a light, and we would get it that way. So that AP machine was pretty much worthless.
Wow. Do we know, Bill, and maybe Steve as well, do we know if there was a warning on this tornado during its lifetime at all from the Weather Bureau or Weather Service in Jackson? Do we know that?
Well, I wish I had asked that question. I reached out to Alan Gerard, who, of course, was longtime MIC at Jackson.
Right.
Who's now in, Kim's office up there in Norman. And the only thing that he really remembered about it is that Fujita came and studied the tornado afterwards. And the original survey maps still exist in the National Weather Service in Jackson. And boy, I bet those are amazing. But he couldn't shed any more light on it. So we'd love to have Chad, the MIC at Jackson, on the show sometime. But he was tied up with kids' baseball games tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
And we need to find that out, Troy, because I wondered the very same thing.
Because, just because Steve said that we didn't get it on television, because he's right. I mean, you remember, TV signed off at 11:30 night with the national anthem,
Right. That's right.
And so there was, even if the TV station had it, again, to me, I'm just wondering, was there ever a tornado warning ever issued on that?
It could have been on the ground, as Jen said, 40 miles.
Yeah. Well, looking at, according to Grzoulis's book on this, he says both watches and warning, it's just generically, both watches and warnings were issued for the Hazelhurst tornado.
Okay.
It's a very generic statement, but so apparently there was. And then 5 days later, there was the water spout, and there were no watches and warnings issued for that one. So looking at that comparison, then he's like, we need to quantify how these tornadoes are, based on their strength and damage. Right. So it'd be interesting to know I don't know if we'll ever find out what time they were issued.
Yeah.
That morning.
All right, Steve, you got a lot of eyewitness accounts here. You need to write a book too.
That would be nice.
But again, but keep in mind, like Jen said, we had watches and warnings, but they're only effective if they get to the public. And I'm leaning way on Steve's side here, that there was no one in Hazelhurst that knew what was happening that morning. I can't see it. I can't see it as much of that getting out. I really don't.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it just came down to where you lived and how your house was constructed, and probably some of the neighborhoods that it struck didn't have good house construction, unfortunately.
Yeah. It did not.
Hey, Steve, let me ask you a question, because I noticed this in the Corinth, Mississippi tornado on April 19th, 1970, which is a real interesting one. I still have very vivid memories of that storm. And one thing I remember, Steve, that was a Sunday afternoon at about 12:57 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And my dad had a Pepsi Cola plant, a bottling plant up in Corinth. And we had found out, we'd just gotten home from church and found out the tornado had hit. And I remember my mom being really upset because Dad was off fishing or doing something. And the Pepsi Cola plant was down where we knew the tornado had been. And so we hopped in that station wagon. And to this day, Steve, I still remember driving down a street and watching people walk out with towels wrapped around their heads. They're bleeding. I still see that from 1970, from April 19th. And one thing, too, that was real interesting for me in Corinth was after that tornado, in the days and the months and even the years after that tornado, how people in Corinth, and I think probably people in Hazelhurst, reacted to bad weather. What happened after that, Steve, and how was there any talk about what happened the next time you had a tornado watch or there was a threat of bad weather? Because that's one thing we saw in North Mississippi is people very quickly went to shelter after that. And I just wondered if you had any recollection of what it was like in the days, months, even years after that.
After that, yeah, pretty much the same thing. You mentioned tornado now. You know, people, you know, pretty much panic. You know, they pay attention. You know,
yeah.
And we even have in Hazelhurst, we now have fallout shelters. You know, that we didn't have then. You know, but yeah, you mentioned tornado and. You know, you got everybody's attention. Yeah.
Is there a siren system, Steve?
Oh, yes, there is. As a matter of fact, there's a system in the neighborhood that we call the Lear's Quarters, one of the most heaviest hit areas of 1969. And yes, there is a system there to warn the people.
Thanks.
Well, Steve, how did you become a documentarian? That's always an
wow.
How somebody got started doing.
You know what? Definitely wasn't my plan. I remember in 1991, we was getting ready to go on family reunion, and my wife decided to buy a camcorder, and she did. And I was just so fascinated about it. And I found out that camcorder was not only a piece of equipment to record, but I found out it was a piece of equipment to edit. And I read the book and I understood the book. And I used that camera to not only to film, but to edit. I put together quite a few pieces, even for the high school. I did a high school yearbook with that camera, edited with the camera and everything. And but the thing that really struck me was that and I want to go back in the 70s because I was a member of a gospel group, the Dixon Singers. They are legendary now, the legendary Dixon Singers. And the Dixon Singers, I was the drummer. The Dixon Singers had a lead singer that to this very day is untouched by nobody you ever heard. This guy, his name was Don Lindsay Dixon. He could really sing gospel. And the Dixon Singers were on their way to being the #1 quartet in the nation. And we were scheduled to be on tour June 14th, 15th, and 16th in New York and New Jersey with some of the top performers, the Mighty Clouds of Joy, the Williams brothers, and the Reverend James Cleveland. Well, we were scheduled to leave out of town, I believe, that Thursday, and we got a call that the concert was canceled. Lindsay worked at a convenience store in Jackson, Mississippi. So Lindsay decided to go to work. And in the wee of the hours, like 4 in the morning, he was shot and killed. Oh, no. The store was robbed. And that pretty much ended the Dixon Singers as far as being the #1 quartet in the nation. People didn't know about Lindsay because they labeled him as a store clerk. They didn't say he was a famous gospel singer or any of that. So they labeled him as a store clerk. And that really hurted me. For years and years and years, that hurted me. And I always wondered why his name was never mentioned. Nobody never did a story about it or anything. Never knowing that it would be me to do a documentary about him.
Now, is that documentary available online?
It's on YouTube, the Don Lindsay Dixon story.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it is. Please check it out.
So James, if he could have made it to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, he might have been the next Percy Sledge.
Oh man.
When a man loves a woman, right?
Oh yeah. Yes, indeed. Percy Sledge.
Steve, do you edit your own video? Do you have somebody do that for you?
You know, I do the listen. I talk to people, I get everything set up, I go out, I do the filming, I do the edit, I do the narration, I do the whole 9 yards from top to bottom.
One man band. I like it.
One man band, yes.
There you go.
Who's going to play the boy with the pop bottle on the head?
Who's going to what now?
Who's going to play the role? The boy with the pop bottle on his head.
I'm glad you said that, because let me tell you what we did. After I put all the scenes together and I'm listening to all these people tell the story. So now I'm thinking, wow, it sure would be nice to do some dramatizations. So again, I go back to the table, I write out the script for all the dramatizations. So now all I need is somebody to play that part, the boy with the pop bottle on his head. So we sent out a casting call. And a young man out of Jackson, Mississippi, 12 years old. His name is Terrence Lamont Smith Jr. Wow, he fitted the description right down to the T. And he was the perfect person to play the part. And
how do you keep the pop bottle on top of his head?
Oh, wow. You got to watch the documentary.
Oh, okay.
You got to watch the documentary.
Can't give away all the secrets, James, on this silly podunk radio show.
That's true. So Steve, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? How can they follow you and your work?
Wow. I'm on Facebook. Hey, you can
well, Kevin can't see you now, so that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can hey, follow me on Facebook, or you can email me, svccproductions@hotmail.com. That's S as in Steve, V as in Victory, C as in Cat, C as in Cat again, production, PRODUCTIONS @hotmail.com.
All right. So, but if somebody wants to watch this documentary, how long do we have to wait, or what do we need to do?
Well, again, like I said, we're shopping it around, so hopefully it won't be much longer. Maybe somebody will pick it up right quick.
What's that new documentary channel they have? I want to see it on there pretty soon.
Yes, indeed. I'm definitely going to be giving them a call.
All right. Well, Steve, thanks a lot for coming on the show this week. We appreciate it. It's fascinating. We can't wait to see it.
Listen, thank you all for having me.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Thank
This
you.
has been fun. All right.
Thank you so much.
Very much. Thank you.
Okay.
all.
Thank you. All right, let's take a quick break here for the astronomy report. We're going to come back and talk weather. We'll do the weather roundup. We'll do picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The moon turns full again on Saturday. Now it's May, so many call it the flower moon, but you could also call it the blue flower moon. The term blue moon most often, at least recently, refers to the second full moon in a calendar month. This happens about every 2.4 years, and since it takes 29 and a half days for the moon to go from full through new and back to full again, or the lunation period, this calendrical coincidence only happens on the 30th or 31st of the month. But Saturday's the 18th, so how can it be blue? That's not the only definition of blue moon. The monthly definition originated in a 1946 article in Sky and Telescope magazine. It appears to be a misinterpretation of the original definition, which dates back to the 1937 edition of the Farmer's Almanac. Now, the Farmer's Almanac used a more seasonal definition, the third of full moons in a season. Seasonal blue moons occur every 2.68 years on average, a little less often. So why the third and not the fourth? No one seems to know. But this is the Farmer's Almanac and not the Astrophysical Journal after all. The last seasonal blue moon occurred on May 21st, 2016, and the next one will occur August 8th, 2021. The last monthly blue moon occurred March 31st, 2019, and the next one will occur on Halloween night, 2020. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
We've already done a little weather roundup here earlier in the show, but I thought we'd take a moment here and let's talk about this system coming out of the west, Troy. Looks like you'll have some action out there, in 5 days, 6 days?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, like Kevin was pointing out, that see how this all works out. We've had a little system that's come into Southwest Texas. Kevin, I'll be kind of watching out around the Trans-Pecos out southeast of El Paso. Real strong upper level low pressure disturbance out there. And earlier today, James, some of those thunderstorms were in the short range and more of the high resolution models forecast to move in here later tonight, but that's really pulled back now. So I guess we are waiting for what, Kevin? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something like that. And the rainfall forecast from the Weather Service are suggesting 1 to 2 inches, at least over our area.
Yeah. The overwhelming pattern here, it feels to me, Troy, like the last couple of years has been these things that sneak under a ridge and they get cut off and they kind of wander either just offshore or they wander just inland, Southern California, Northern Mexico, or Arizona, which just wreaks havoc on timing over and over again. Yeah. And so I think I mentioned in the pre-show, Matthew's high school graduation is on Saturday. So I've been praying for, hey, maybe that thing will slow down and the timing will be off by the time the weekend comes, but this one doesn't appear to be that way. It's at least, if not a full trough, a partial trough. I guess it's maybe wish casting on my part, but it seems like the last thing I saw is that it kind of wants to start to lift out and weaken a little bit over New Mexico, which maybe helps us a little bit. But it's definitely different than the majority of the previous ones, I think, in my opinion.
Well, this last week, Kevin, down here, we carry these high probabilities, but our timing just sucked. I mean, we did not hit anything on timing.
Right.
But it would still, the probabilities would end up verifying because the sky maybe was supposed to fall here, but it fell a little bit over here, a few hours off.
Yeah.
Good last week.
And this is where, I'm not going to go off on social media, but I started seeing it over the weekend, when SPC gives you a 15% chance on day 6, everybody goes crazy, and then that stuff starts to spread. And I always go back to Laura Myers, great comment at an IWT meeting. She said, are you creating awareness or anxiety? And a lot of times it ends up leaning toward anxiety. So we have to all sit here and be anxious for a week's time rather than being responsible and calm, which is always disappointing.
Yeah.
So is a day 5, 6, and 7 outlook appropriate from SPC?
It's a great question. I just don't think it matters anymore because all that data is out there. And so we're not putting that horse back in the barn.
Yeah. Pandora's box has been open a long time. Not going back.
I tried that years ago. It didn't work.
And again, down here down here in the Dixie Alley, our season, I think, is over, Bill. We've had these little minor episodes over the past couple of weeks, but in terms of this really ferocious weather we had in March and April, that seems to be over, and we're kind of shifting into the Death Ridge type situation as we get closer to summer, and we'll be fully underneath that ridge this weekend. And hopefully, Jen and John, you guys will warm up.
I'm hoping.
Late this week, huh?
Yeah, I am hoping. Ohio Valley's, we're looking better here in Ohio. I think 70s by the end of the week. Maybe pushing 80 at a few locations by the weekend, but we've been so cold. I mean, we've had some pretty good rain events here, and some pretty good storms here or there. But it's been so cold, we've not had a whole lot of severe weather here. So just a few little minor events. But I'm ready for the warmth. I got to save on my heating bill.
So James, you think we'll have one of these bogus GFS tropical cyclones spin up in the Western Caribbean and end up in the Gulf? It happened last year.
Oh, I'm not even. We have the GFS with the bogus tropical system already.
Yeah, several
over
runs.
the weekend, wasn't there? Yeah, 384 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
But this one's sort of backed up by an uptick in the MJO that's going to be moving into this region. So I wouldn't count it completely out just yet.
Well, it's interesting
which
for Texas, James and Kevin. I mean, even beyond the system for this weekend that we see coming, Kevin, beyond that, there's evidence that ridge begins to build back over us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still the 8 to 14 days kind of damp, a little bit trending above average on precip, but temperatures back up there. And I wonder if we're not shifting to more of a summer pattern, even, James, this far west back into Texas after this.
Yep.
That'll break the storm chasers' hearts.
This is why I'm forecasting exclusively from social media now and not bothering.
So let's talk about the hurricane season real quick. Anybody have any strong thoughts on the Atlantic season? John?
Uh-oh.
Oh my goodness. Dr. John.
Say fender bender.
Fender bender. No, John had a crash and he had to reboot his system. And the first time he comes back, he has the helium effect. So we'll bring John back in just a second. No, John is his IQ is in excess of 400. So whenever we have the seasonal outlooks, we like to refer to John.
I figured out, you mentioned hurricanes. I figured out when Steve was talking who the mystery kid is. It's clearly Nash Roberts as a boy.
That's true.
with the Coke bottle on his head.
Right.
Can we try this again?
I bet if you follow that thread, that's
run.
Yeah, John, you're good. So what's a hurricane season going to do? Go.
Oh my goodness. So we're looking at probably a week El Nino that'll extend through the season. We've got probably we're in the warm phase of the Atlantic meridial overturning circulation. So those two factors. And then I think what's really going to be important is where the subtropical high sets up. If that subtropical high sets up in the Western Atlantic, look out Florida and the Southeast.
Yeah. Don't say it.
Sorry.
It's been a bad several years for us.
No kidding. I know we went through 10 years of hold on, right? Yeah, that's a possibility this season.
So I was trying to see what Klotzbach and his team at Colorado State have forecast. That 13 named storms, 5 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes.
And all it takes is one.
Yeah, we all know that.
I was reminded here when I first got here too. If we get a big enough ridge, then all of a sudden Wichita Falls can be interested in tropical season because I was told here that they really have to come in at or below Corpus Christi to have any chance of getting up here. So if we get a big ridge that'll push them that way, then I'll weigh in too.
And don't forget, you guys can have Eastern Pacific tropical system.
Yes, we do get that moisture. That's happened many times.
Oh, yeah.
I will never forget. I was at a hydrology conference in Tulsa, and we had a flash flood event from Hurricane Tico, which was an Eastern Pacific hurricane. Troy, this was back in the early 80s sometime.
We were never invited back to Tulsa after that. I never come back here.
Show title.
No. I was at that meeting, James. I was there with you. So
yeah, that was it was like an AMS joint severe weather hydrology session. And we were there, and it was a nasty flooding event. So
never got invited back. So
no. So anyway, let's move on here to picks of the week. This is where we go around the horn and share something that is weather related. This can be a website, this can be hardware, software, anything like that. So let's start with Troy. You got anything for us this week?
Heck no. I'm mostly I kind of bow out, and so I'm lazy this week. I'm sitting here, but I will tell you this. I know you can't do it. I'm sitting here looking at what Bill sent to me from the WeatherWise article from, I'd really like people to be able to see that, which I know we can't post it, but February 1970. That really is an interesting article. I sure would like us to be able to post that, but I don't know what we can do.
Well, Jen found you can buy it online for $43. So
we'll get the WeatherBrains corporate gold card and see if we can.
Oh yeah, along with the Learjet you guys use.
Yeah,
well, it should be fair use by now, shouldn't it? February 1970. Well, that's 49 years, I guess. So when does it go out of the copyright?
Yep.
49 years.
Now that Jen's mentioned it, anybody has, and by the way, I'm going to plug this while we can. We'll do a plug. Has anyone heard about Tom's progress?
Jen knows all about it. Jen, talk about it.
Jen, what can you tell us about Tom Grzoulis's project, progress on the new version of the Tornado Project book, which I'm sitting here, I can't wait. I'm ready to order a couple of copies of that.
Yeah.
What's the latest you hear on it, Jen? How's Tom doing and everything?
He's doing great. I actually got an opportunity to talk to him on the phone, and we talked for an hour and a half, and we were like besties. He's amazing. And
you still can't get him to come on WeatherBrains, can you, Jen?
Not yet. He's not ready. I'm trying.
I told you. He said his exact words were, "Why would I do that?"
No, he's not ready yet. I think I can get him on here, but he is working hard. He actually blames me for the delay because I got him hooked on newspapers.com. And because of that, he has got all of these other events that I use him as a source for all of my summaries. And so I've actually found a few things that he's added to the book, a few corrections and what have you. And so Tornado Talk's actually going to be a part of the book, which is awesome. I'm honored. But he's still looking at probably 2020. It'll be two big books. I mean, I take his book everywhere. It's right here.
Yeah, mine has green duct tape all over it.
See Jennifer at the gym lifting her Grzoulis.
I need the other one so I can balance myself out here. But he's got two in this size. I think he's looking at 2020, and he's still trying to figure out a few things he wants to add to it. But he's awesome.
Dr. John's.
Are you showing up your library there, Dr. John?
Yeah, that's mine.
I would say.
I would put your mind back here, but I think y'all call the fire marshal on this place.
Yeah. What's the capacity for books in that office? Boy, I think you've exceeded it.
Jen, do me a favor and tell him a lot of people are interested and we're really excited about it. So
absolutely. Well, get ready. I mean, he's wanting to promote this through Kickstarter. And so,
well, if he come on the show, we would really get him some kickstarting going on.
Absolutely. I will work on him on that because he's like, are enough people going to want to buy it? I'm like, yes.
Are you kidding?
No doubt.
It's running $550 on eBay for the original one.
Exactly. Wow. So, yeah, he's awesome.
All right, Dr. John, what's your pick of the week?
Well, I'm not sure this has been used before, so let me just throw it out there anyway. This is a great site that I discovered it and forgot about it. It's not that old. It's produced by SPC. It's the Statistical Severe Convective Risk Assessment Model, or SSCRAM. This is fantastic. I don't know how I didn't realize this before, but it's probability of 4-hour probabilities of tornado, wind, and hail based on historical record of thunderstorms. It's absolutely fantastic. Wow. If you've never seen this, you're going to just drool when you see it.
This sounds like a time suck.
Yeah. Show title.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm like you. I've not seen that in a while, but I remember looking at that and I'm thinking, I've not thought about that site in a long time.
It's fantastic.
This is good stuff. And again, all these links will be up in the website, weatherbrains.com. All right. So let's see. Kev, what you got?
I have a podcast, Recode Decode, Kara Swisher. It's, since I'm on the social media bandwagon lately, there's a guy named Tristan Harris, who is the founder and operator at something called the Center for Humane Technology. And he made me really think hard on this podcast because there's just a ton of good information about social media, what it's doing to or for society. He put a little chink in my armor because he kind of tries to make the point. He said, look, this stuff isn't going away. So maybe we should be trying to mold it to us and our needs as opposed to what has gone on for the last 10 or 15 years where it has been molding us to its needs. And I thought that was a valid point. So I think it's a really, really, really worthwhile podcast.
Let's get social. With social media.
So let's do a poll real quick on while we're on this subject on the show. John, you're off social media, right?
Yeah, that's right, except for LinkedIn.
Kevin, you're off social media for all practical purposes, right?
Yeah, and as I mentioned last week, there was I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day last week, there was a company-wide, Nexstar-wide social media workshop. The company did not come down from on high and say, thou must do X, Y, or Z. They said that would be handled at the local level for each station. So I don't know where that goes, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, so but as of right now, you're basically inactive. You have some accounts, but you don't post, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, Troy, are you active on social media?
On the Twitter at UT, and that's frankly how we get out information for our students. Lightning in class times, things like that, is proved to be pretty valuable to get into the millennials, getting to college students.
Yeah.
Do you use Instagram to reach them?
No, I wouldn't know what that was if it walked up and said hello, James.
And that's a show title.
There's a show title.
They're full of them tonight.
Jen, tell us about your social media use. I'm trying to do an audit here of everybody on the show to see where we stand here.
I'm all over social media. Now, personally, I only use Facebook just to kind of, touch base with family and friends. But for Tornado Talk, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram for all of our posts. So I post daily, and I'm on, probably Twitter is the one I'm on the most. I used to do some live real-time tornado coverage, but now I'm focused on the tornadoes of the past. So I kind of keep track of how things are going, but I'm all over the place. So
I found it really interesting when I got off, and I didn't get a ton of comments, but the majority of them were people saying to me, boy, I wish I could too. And I found that really troubling and somewhat dangerous, that people just really wanted to, but they're just not allowed in for whatever their reasons are, if it's work or personal or whatever. But I just thought that was really telling on what a trap that they've set.
Yeah, it's all consuming. It can be, at least.
That's right. Yeah.
But I really try to balance it, and I use publishing tools, so I am not on there 24/7. So yeah. I will plan my posts, and I think that's the best thing that you can do, so you can give yourself a break, or you will be looking at it constantly because it's never ending. There's weather all the time. There's tornado pictures all the time. Whatever.
Right. And it's designed that way to hook you in.
Yeah.
One of the most troubling things that I heard during that webinar, and what they did is they went around the company and they got 5 or 6 or whatever it was, I don't know what you call them, high performers, to say, well, this is what I do. And I was just really stunned. There was one gal, she's got a lot of followers and she's very active on social media and yada, yada, yada. But she was just rambling on saying, she does this and she does that and she does the other thing. And at one point she said, yep, even on the weekends, my friends and family know that there's going to come a point several times during the day when I excuse myself and say, I'm going to work. And this goes so she can go make a post somewhere on social media to keep up her 8 or 10 or 12 per day. And from the company standpoint, well, of course, they're going to go and applaud her and pat her on the head and say, good girl, because she's promoting the company's interest at that point. But from a social standpoint, what does that mean? This woman's family and friends know that she's going to walk away from them no matter what they're doing multiple times over a weekend. I think that's stunning.
I'm still concerned with the amount of social media that we see. And I sometimes wonder, are we getting any weather forecasts done in TV weather offices nowadays? I've seen some fine graphics, and I realize we're past the age of where you used to, what do you do? You had to do the graphics, James. You had to do them to get them to develop the moving stuff. I cannot think of the word right now.
Rendering.
Yeah, you remember back then,
Oh, yeah.
an hour to render something, and nowadays it's automatic. But it's the same way, and I don't mean this as a criticism of the Weather Service, but they put up some pretty cool graphics on their websites, and I'm just wondering, are we getting enough time to forecast? Are we able to spend the time getting that done?
Right.
No, look, the time is the biggest struggle for me. Everybody that knows me knows that. Time. Yeah. It takes time to do a weather forecast properly, to do forecasting and analysis the way you learn it in college, the way you've seen it done the right way. It takes time and concentration. And it is so stinking frustrating because there are days I don't have time to think. And to me, that's dangerous. Yeah. And so I can't buy 1 microsecond. I cannot buy a millisecond. I can't. So every day I need to evaluate what I'm doing. And of course, the other problem, I'm not sleeping. During the week, I'm sleeping 3 hours a night, and that's dangerous. So that's one of my, and it's not all social media. It's not all social media. This is school visits, multiple school visits a day, all this other stuff I'm doing. And there are days where I think I really got to work on this because it's my biggest struggle in life. And I'm not doing the forecasting process justice on many days. I'll be the first to admit.
At some level, are you held hostage by it, and or are you addicted to it?
I would say being held hostage, yes, because I become the town crier here. I've got 3 gazillion followers. So everybody around here sends me car wrecks and interstate closures and fires, and they expect me to retweet it as the town crier so everybody else can benefit from their knowledge. And quite frankly, a lot of it's important. If you got a major interstate shut down, they come to me. I'm the guy.
But you know what? I saw one of those earlier today because like I said, I've got my Twitter account, and oftentimes if I get on, something that you've posted is at the top of that. And there was a guy that posted a traffic picture, something on the highway, 59 maybe, whatever it was. He was going the other direction, but there was a big backup in the opposite direction that he was going. But he clearly had taken that picture while driving down the highway behind the wheel and tweeted that to you.
Oh.
And so he took the time not only to take the picture, but to tweet it. And then you were forced to reward him by sharing his piece of information with 500,000 people. That seems like a problem.
But again, going back to my time management, see, if you lived in my world, you will understand there's some things you don't have time to do. And I honestly don't have time to analyze those photographs.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. See, now it's on autopilot. Right. And so you've encouraged this guy to drive down the highway, and anybody who sees you to not pay attention to the roadway, take a picture, and then go to the expense of tweeting it while he's driving. And what's the traffic? I mean, who's looking at for traffic information? Are people that are driving? Do people have TweetDeck open on their dashboard watching to see if James retweets things that are traffic related?
You've gone to meddling now, Kevin. Yeah.
But Kevin's got a bug up his butt.
Oh no, it's really. I mean, but seriously, answer and then the addiction question.
So you think that there's no such thing as a passenger in a car? That's the other thing. Everybody just assumes everybody's driving and they're tweeting and driving.
This picture was taken from behind the wheel.
Right. But most of these pictures I get, it's not. And so, again, it is part of my time.
You just said you don't have time to look at them.
I don't.
But then how do you know that most of them are not behind the wheel?
When I go home at midnight, I will typically do a review of all this stuff.
After the
come
fact.
down my feed.
I see.
After the fact.
Okay. And
I look at it. And so every once in a while, I get some guys, you're an a-hole because you're encouraging people to tweet while driving. You're going to get somebody killed. Blood will be on your hands. And so.
Well, how is that not true?
Because I think anybody in their right mind knows that you're not supposed to do that.
But some guy did it today and you retweeted him.
It was his wife holding the camera over.
James, your weathercast.
All right. But you said you're held hostage. You said you're held hostage to it. Are you addicted to it?
I'm not addicted to it. I'm held hostage to it.
Can you stop?
Well, the question. So if I'm the town crier, who else is going to do it? Nobody wants to work hard to do it. Nobody. Nobody.
You are addicted to it then?
No, I'm not addicted. I'm addicted to being a public servant.
Understood.
That's the reason I work 24/7. I've always worked these wild hours, even before Twitter, Facebag, the gram, all this stuff. I mean, nothing's changed. I'm just now throwing that in on top of everything else. So, but my position is that I'm here to help people. And if I can help people by these megaphones I have, then I'm glad to do it. And I'm honored people send this stuff to me, and I try and answer questions when people send me questions. And but it is time consuming, and I wish I could have some of that time.
We would have
back.
had a James interdiction tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't on the agenda. That was not on the
No, but I gotta go. So
Okay.
my pick of the week. I'll let Bill finish this out. Remember the plane crash in Moscow a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
10 days ago. There was a piece that came out. Can lightning strike bring down a passenger jet? And I'm not an aviator. I'm not a pilot, but I thought it was a pretty well done piece. I don't think they've determined the cause of that crash yet, but weather is one possibility, and that's my pick of the week. So, Bill,
hey, wait, before you go, you put up a screenshot of some article about you. What was that? Can you email that?
I did that to make your head explode.
Is this a recent thing?
Yeah, it came out. I think.
Oh my goodness!
It's like what Walter Cronkite lab.
Yeah.
What Night Cronkite News Lab.
Yeah.
And,
well, mail it to us, would you?
Yeah, I'll mail that to you. In fact, that'll be my secondary pick of the week. So, I don't quite know the story behind this organization, but from people that work in journalism, they say it's a reputable deal. So, anyway, all right, Bill, we got to get your pick and Jim's pick, and y'all let you wrap it up.
Yeah, outstanding. So, Jim, let's get your pick before we go any further, and then I'll take the foghorn by looking at our guests that are coming up. But what's your pick of the week, Jim?
I would like to pick your public library. And here's why. If you do not have a library card, I think you need to go get one at your local library. Not only to do weather, if you're interested in weather and you want to look that up, or for me, it's all about history. But I not only got a library card from my local library, but also from the city of Columbus. And the amount of online resources and databases that you can access, Newsbank and all these different sources for articles and what have you, it really is a wealth of information. So I'm going to promote getting a library card.
It's good.
That is a great pick. And I thought it was interesting that there were takeaways from the Birmingham city budget this week in the newspaper that we only get 3 days a week. That talked about the things that were there, and one of the highlights was that the number of fines in the Birmingham Public Library, which is a source of revenue for the city, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, have plummeted since 2015. And so I think that unfortunately gives an underlying cause that there are probably a lot less people using the library than ever before. But like our Lynn Henley Research Library, the stuff in the collections there is just phenomenal. Especially for researching events like this with Steve tonight. That was a fascinating story. The prophet with the pop bottle on his head. So
yeah, absolutely. And also, I found out recently, because I'm a Penn State grad, that as a Penn State Alumni Association member, I can access sources from the Penn State Library. So there's so many ways that the library is amazing. And it's a wealth of information and stuff. Not only online, but going into there too. I'm a little bit of a library geek, but I love them. I would go to every library I could. So
going back and looking at tornado stuff is really interesting there. And I spent some time in Mississippi back at the library there, going through and looking at the tornado that I lived through. And I'm going to now spend a little more time looking at the Hazelhurst stuff. But you're right. It's amazing because the small town newspapers in these communities contains a lot of information that a lot of people don't get to see. And it's there in in the libraries.
Absolutely.
Well, and pitch for a minute about Tornado Talk, Jen, your amazing site.
Well, thank you. Yeah, tornadotalk.com started off as a podcast, but have transitioned the whole brand to all about tornado history. And I have a daily summary, at least one summary for every day of the year. And it's formulated around a calendar. So you click on this date and you can go to whatever date and it will give you a summary about a tornado that day, but also graphs and maps of how many tornadoes have occurred since 1950 on that day. And so we have those in graphs and maps and how many F3s, F4s, whatever have occurred on those days. I am pro social media, especially for this, because I would never have met Grzulis if he hadn't joined Twitter. I would never have met you guys by going to, finding out information. And I learn a lot from folks when you post a tornado on Tornado Talk's Facebook page or what have you, people that respond and say, I lived through this, or people that have sent me pictures of damage photos that their parents took from the 1959 tornado. They're like, I have these photos. Can I send them to you? And I can add them to the summary. So it's really become a crowdsource, a wealth of information and people collaborating to write stories. So I'm hoping it will continue to grow. And I'm totally into this, learning all about the tornadoes of the past, because with that, I think we can learn about how to be, really learn how to stay protected in the future. And I love the stories about community. For me, just the stories, how people come together and help each other. So that's what I'm about.
Well, that is so cool. So, Dr. John, you mentioned something in the chat and we missed it along the way, but you brought up the fact that this event in Hazelhurst was only really 21 years into the modern era of tornado forecasting.
Yeah, it was in its infancy. So it doesn't really surprise me, even if we were making tornado forecasts, that we were in its infancy, getting that process accomplished and getting it disseminated. It doesn't really surprise me. And I thought it was really interesting. You guys were talking earlier about what it was like for us back in the 60s and 70s. I remember a black and white television with just 3 channels. And I talked to my kids today who are walking around with this thing glued to them. They can't possibly understand what life was like without a computer, for example.
Yeah.
I was
going to say something else too. And Jen, Tom actually brought this out with some stuff he had done back in the 1930s, back in tornadoes he'd written back in the 1930s, and how there was actually racial discrimination and documentation.
Oh, absolutely.
Tupelo, Mississippi, 1936. They talk about how all the white folks that they documented all those, and they certainly got some of the black folks, the African-American population, but they weren't nearly. And that's really amazing. I talk about that in my classes and talk about Tom's entries about some of those tornadoes, and that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's why I referred to that eye-opening documentary that was on Independent Lens. I think it actually aired in February. I recorded it and just watched it this past weekend about the historically black colleges.
Yeah,
and the title I think was "We Are Rising," and it talked about the event at Southern University in Baton Rouge, and it just boiled over all those years of being oppressed, just sort of boiled over. So scary things. That was an amazing year, that 1969 though. The men walked on the moon. I mean, you had the Helter Skelter murders. You had the Mets win the World Series. You had Joe Namath beat the Colts. I threw that in there for you, Dr. John. So you would, you could remember that year. It was
I remember all those things.
Crazy
I remember
year.
A friend of mine going to the World Series and bringing back a piece of the turf from the outfield as a show topic in class.
Oh.
So it was an amazing time to be in America, that's for sure, and in the world, and an amazing time today too. A lot of stuff going on in the world today. So, well, next week Kim's got the show. We'll be talking about how we talk to different communities. She's going to have, I think, Marshall Shepard. Is that right, Dr. John? Troy, is that true? She's going to have.
Know. Is that true?
I have not seen that yet, but that'd be great.
Neither have I.
So yeah. Kim is in charge of that show. That'll be fun. May 27th, that's Memorial Day. That's a famous day in Alabama weather history because we had our own 105-mile tornado on that day that hit the radar at the National Weather Service WSR 57 radar in Centerville, Alabama. Jen, you probably got a write-up about that somewhere on your story. And that is an amazing story by itself. That'll be the anniversary of that. But we'll be talking to a meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Flagstaff who has taken it upon herself to make sure that meteorology is translated for the Navajo language. And that's part of what their office does. And they had a poster at NWA last year in St. Louis that was just fascinating with some of that. So that's just a couple of the shows that will be coming up here on WeatherBrains. Was there any other further business to bring before the big digital mahogany table here, Troy? Anything to add?
I move for adjournment.
All right. Get a second, Dr. John?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
WeatherBrains, this is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. Jen, thank you for being here tonight. It's good having you on. We need to have you.
it.
more often and get you on here. Hopefully, you won't stay up too late when those tornadoes come hopping through Kansas later this weekend around all your stations. So good luck with all of that. But
thank you guys so much.
But it's always nice to talk to you and nice to have you here. But until next Monday night, when Kim McLean will be in charge of our show, I'm Bill Murray, the guest weather booking officer, telling you to have a great week and keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Nice to
Jen.
see
Bye,
you.
John. Bye, Troy.
Bye-bye.
And bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a fun show tonight. Thank you guys for watching. I got to go back and do the television side, so appreciate it. Good to have everybody on the show. Fun discussion tonight. Love it when Kevin gets cranky. And Steve was a fun guest talking about that Mississippi tornado back in the late 60s, back in 1969. So we'll see you guys next Monday night. Thank you all for watching. Have a great week, and God bless. Bye-bye.